So Grace Randolph is in hot water once again. She's being legitimately almost canceled this time. Not for any controversial claim or social issue or anything like that. It's more because of this allegation that she made against the lead actor for The Mandalorian season 1 and 2. She essentially alleges that he was a diva on set and wanted to have his helmet off for many scenes in the second season, and that he was incredibly upset when when Disney wouldn't comply, and therefore he went above Dave Filoni and everybody at Star Wars, and then went to Lucasfilms, the higher ups at Lucasfilms and Disney and everything, and tried to have his will and get his way. So I'm going to play the clip with her allegations of sort of describing what she heard happened on set, and I'll give you my thoughts.
So now the tea, as promised. I haven't been able to confirm, though, whether or not this was resolved for season 3. I hope that it will be, though, because I really like Pedro Pascal on this show. And also, now that you know this, you'll understand why The Mandalorian season 2 will have a good chunk of it that does not feature The Mandalorian, or at least not Din Djarin, because the title doesn't specify which Mandalorian, a loophole they weren't expecting to maybe need. And by the way, that's already been confirmed in the recent Entertainment Weekly interview by Jon Favreau himself, that season 2 will focus heavily on other characters and storylines that don't involve Pedro Pascal. Why is that? Well, that's because while filming season 2, Pedro Pascal really wanted to have some scenes with his helmet off, which I totally understand, from an actor's perspective. Also because there are other Mandalorian characters, or at least ones wearing Mandalorian armor, that get to have scenes without helmets. So it does seem a little unfair. Like he can't have one scene in private with the child? But no, the Mandalorian creative team wouldn't budge on this. So Pedro Pascal, from what I've heard from 2 sources now, was frustrated about this, and also was pretty darn uncomfortable in the Mando suit on set. So he became difficult. And the final straw, though, even though he was, difficult to be around on set, the final straw was that he went to Lucasfilm, from what I heard from my sources, to try and get them to intervene on his behalf. And you combine that with Lucasfilm already trying to get involved with story aspects of season 2, which I've also heard, including focusing more on standalone episodes rather than making them more connected, which is what I hear the Mandalorian creative team wanted to do, which is kind of what was happening at the end of season 1. So when Pedro Pascal went to the Lucasfilm, the Mando team was like, you know what, you should just go. And Pedro Pascal did. So that happened about halfway through filming. So either The Mandalorian season 2 will switch halfway through, or I've been thinking about it, I think there's a chance, and this is probably what I would do, is that they'll sprinkle the Mandalorian stuff with Pedro Pascal that they did shoot throughout the season to make it feel more whole, and then they'll fill in the blanks with these other character stories. We have wondered why Dave Filoni characters are being brought onto this show instead of having their own show. Maybe that was always the plan, or maybe because Pedro Pascal and the creative team had this falling out halfway through filming, they needed new exciting characters that would make up for the loss of a fan favorite. It's like, hey, you might not have as much of Pedro Pascal, but look at all this cool new stuff you're getting, which I also think I understand where everybody's coming from on this. Now, as I said, I've heard the breakup was pretty bad with both sides pretty darn upset, but hopefully cooler heads can prevail. Maybe, again, they already have, so that Pedro Pascal's Mandalorian can return for season 3 with his helmet off for 1 or 2 scenes.
Okay, so just so you know, spoilers ahead for my coverage of this situation, as everybody knows. Grace Randolph, oh my gosh, what an interesting character. I've done a video on her that now has, I think, 100,000 views, where I explain why do so many people hate Grace Randolph. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll link it in the description below. And it's actually there's a lot of vitriol against her. And in the beginning, I posed the video as well, I'm definitely not endorsing some of the language that's used against her. And people are really, really mean to her, I think. And with that being said, though, there are moments where you're kind of like, oh, I don't know, maybe she deserves it. What are you doing, girl? Come on now. So in this case, she's basically making these really, really serious allegations. And then, of course, the main actor who she's referring to comes forward and totally denies them, which I'll also play right now.
Another Daniel would like to know, you've said apparently that you want to have your helmet off in future Mandalorian episodes. Is that true?
Ooh. that is not true, actually. It's a really wonderful way of telling the story. It's always been a very clear creed for the character, and the collaborative process of the whole thing has been we've all been on the same page with this. I think so. You know, what I want is for them to make the best show possible, however they get that done.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, just being totally honest and upfront, that statement from the actor doesn't really mean anything, because of course he's going to deny allegations that he's difficult to work with, a horrible actor, and like, she doesn't say he's a horrible actor, but she says that he is difficult to work with and was a diva on set, basically. And of course he's going to deny those allegations for the sake of his career. But my point and my view on it is this: Grace Randolph needs to be very careful, and she better be right about these allegations. You know, she's now saying that they're still true. She's doubling down. She's refusing to delete the tweets, even though she's now getting ratioed on Twitter really hard. Her videos on Mandalorian are getting dislike bombed out the wazoo. She's still doubling down, and she's saying, like, I'm not deleting because my allegations are true. Now, just in the same way we can't believe, you know, his tweet, Pascal's tweets, we also can't believe hers, because, of course, she also has the same incentive to deny the allegations that her allegations are false. So if she has faulty information, and let's say she learned now that her information was bogus, which is kind of self-evident in the show, but not fully, I suppose. It certainly seems as though her allegations are not true, and that's what everybody is saying. I can't say 100% that they're not true. I mean, I'll give an example. When it came to this Batman game, I had inside information about that. It was a Damian Wayne Batman video game being developed at WB Games Montreal. And I didn't leak any like plot details about the game or anything. I just said what it was. It's just like, yeah, they're making a new Batman game. It's Damian Wayne Batman. Saw some images of some villains, that type of thing. And then the game was canceled. And then when it ended up being a different game, everybody was like, see, you were wrong. You were wrong. Like, it's not true. Your leaks were incorrect. And it's like, well, no, what I was saying actually was true. It was a Damian Wayne Batman game in development. They just canceled it and shifted gears. In other words, her allegation was that halfway through filming season 2, he walked off the set and quit filming, and then there were going to be a bunch of other Mandalorians and other characters brought into season 2. Certainly, based upon the way the season played out, it didn't look like that was the case, but what if they struck a deal halfway through? And it is true that halfway through the season he walked off the set, but then at some point he was able to come back and negotiate a deal, and he kind of went on like a strike, or so to speak. She made it seem like filming was already done, and that's when she made the allegation that he had quit halfway through season 2, and then there was going to be not as much content with that main character throughout, and that he was throwing a fit because he wanted to have his helmet off so that people could see his face. I mean, here's the thing. We can't really prove it either way. And that's where I think some people are probably over-exaggerating. They're like, see, this is proof that Grace Randolph was wrong. And it's like, no, I mean, to be fair, the character does take off his helmet more than he ever has throughout all 2 of the seasons in the final episode. That could provide some evidence that she potentially could be right. Moreover, another thing that could potentially lend evidence to the fact that she was correct is that at the end of the episode, Luke Skywalker takes Baby Yoda, obviously, and, our main hero is basically left, without Baby Yoda with his helmet off. And it's almost presented as though this is season 3 is going to be a different story without that character, without, that character that we followed for season 1 and 2. And, again, that's not evidence that Grace Randolph is right either, because that very easily could have been the plan the entire time, and that there was no, character drama at all. And, Pascal obviously says, like, well, I totally knew going into it that the helmet was going to be on. I've never had any issues about it. A lot of people on set have come out and said that these allegations are false. So personally, I'm leaning to the fact that they're not true. But what my point is that we can't say 100% either way. And Grace Randolph does have a decent track record as a scooper. You've got to be honest. I mean, even in my video, I made this video a couple months ago that now has almost like 1 million views, or 100,000 views. And it's why do people hate Grace Randolph? She is a pretty divisive figure, and a lot of people don't like her. But a lot of people pointed out, like, hey, even though I don't like Grace Randolph, she's taught me a lot about the industry, and her scoops are pretty good. And it's like, it's the same thing with Jason Schreier. Everybody knows I have beef with Jason Schreier, the ex-Kotaku reporter. And it's the same thing. I can't say that Jason Schreier is a schmuck that knows nothing. Maybe in times when I'm angry at him, I'll say that, or I'm really frustrated with him. But the reality of it is, no, I can't be totally biased and tell you that he's wrong about all of his scoops. The reality of it is, the vast majority of the time, he's right. Even if I don't like it, it's the reality. He's right a lot of the times. It's the same thing with Grace Randolph. She's right a lot of the times. So there are a lot of things that could have happened here. One thing that could have happened is the rumor is exaggerated. In other words, Grace Randolph is onto something in the effect that Pascal actually did want to have his helmet off at some point in the season. So she could potentially be right that Pedro Pascal actually did want to take off his helmet more than he was allowed to in season 1 and 2. But she could be wrong about the fact that he walked off the set and was difficult to work with. I mean, she said, my sources are saying that he's difficult to work with. What does that mean? That's a subjective opinion. That could just be somebody interpreting that he's butthurt about not having this thing that he wants to do, which might not even be true. That could just be the person being overly sensitive and thinking that the guy's rude when he's not. I mean, how do you know? How do I measure difficult to work with? How do I measure that? So to me, that's bogus. I can't even take that for anything. It means nothing. In a similar sense, her saying well, I'm doubling down on my claims. They were true. It's how do we know? You have no evidence, first of all. And why do I just believe you? That doesn't make any sense. Why I should just take your word for it, right? But what I'm saying is that there could be some minimal amount of truth to what she's saying, and therefore her allegations are mostly incorrect, but there's still some level of truth to them. In other words, Pascal might have said in passing of yeah, all these other Mandalorians get to take their helmets off. I wish I got to as well. And maybe he had a conversation with the director and the scriptwriter of oh, for this scene, I think it'd be really impactful if the Mandalorian could take his helmet off here, and for my character to remove his helmet. And maybe the writers and director didn't let him. In season 1, he obviously did, I think only one time in all of season 1. In season 2, a couple times now. And potentially that could be the case, that there's some minuscule amount of truth to what she's saying, but she's painting him as this diva, this awful person that abandoned the set and is now quitting season 3, blah, blah, blah. And maybe there's just some minimal amount of truth that, he mentioned in passing, hey, it'd be really great. I think for this scene would be better if I could take my helmet off. And there was maybe a minimal disagreement, a respectful disagreement about whether or not that scene best warrants to have the helmet off or on, and why or why not. And I don't know. My point being is that you can't take Pascal's word at it fully, or Grace Randolph's, but it certainly seems, based upon what we've seen in season 2, that Grace Randolph is wrong. It just seems that her rumor was off base. And I'm just giving a little bit of benefit to the doubt in everybody trying to cancel her, that yes, I understand that everybody likes to dog and hop on Grace Randolph, and that sounded sexual. I really I mean like that. I mean, people love to hop on the I hate Grace Randolph train, and that Grace Randolph sucks and this and that. But she does have a pretty good track record. And, I don't know. Maybe he did at some point express some interest in having the mask off more. But the reality of it is this is the problem with it, is that she posed him in a negative light. She is, in a sense, slandering him and making him look bad and saying, oh, he is so difficult to work with. Oh, my God. That could just be her friend that works on the show being like, I don't like him. He's difficult to work with. It's what does that mean? What does that mean? Define that. Explain. Oh, he quit halfway through season 2. It certainly doesn't look like it. He's in all the episodes. It's what do you mean he quit halfway through? He's in the final episode. I don't understand. So, certainly it seems like it certainly seems as though her allegations are either entirely wrong or mostly wrong. I'm just providing that small window where maybe she was a little bit onto something, that he expressed this creative difference, but it certainly doesn't seem as though he's in bad terms with the staff or anything. It certainly doesn't seem like he's going away either. Just because he gave Baby Yoda to Luke at the end of season 2 doesn't mean he's not going to be in season 3, So I don't know. I think that that's really what it comes down to. Of course, that same actor, by the way, is going to be in Wonder Woman 1984. So we'll see how he does in that. But, you know, that's pretty much my 2 cents on this. Grace Randolph certainly seems like she's wrong. It's a story of he said, she said. But Grace Randolph needs to really be careful. And I really hope that she had some solid information in making this allegation that could potentially ruin his career. Like, if he gets a reputation of being a diva, that he's difficult to work with, and that's not true, I mean, that's like slanderous. That is a really, really big problem. So she better be right, but it doesn't look like she was.